Most of us know the primal comfort of locking the front door at night. You're inside, the world is outside, and you are safe. But imagine sitting in your living room and hearing the distinct, heavy sound of footsteps echoing from the empty attic directly above you. In 1922, that nightmare became the reality for a family living in the frozen, remote Bavarian countryside. On a small, isolated German farmstead called Hinterkaifeck, 6 people were found murdered. The victims, including 2 young children, were killed with a mattock. It's a heavy, pickaxe-like agricultural tool that requires immense physical strength and deliberate swinging force to use as a weapon. When investigators arrived, they realized the perpetrator hadn't fled the property after the attack. Evidence suggests the killer had spent days embedded in the house before the murders and remained there for days afterward. The Hinterkaifeck case presents a rare behavioral sequence: a lethal intruder who functioned as a phantom observer, an efficient butcher, and finally, a domestic caretaker. The timeline begins with the phantom phase. 6 months before the murders, the family's previous maid abruptly quit, swearing to neighbors that the house was haunted by unseen spirits. The family soon found physical proof that the intruder was flesh and blood. Days before their deaths, they discovered a single set of heavy footprints stamped into the fresh snow, leading from the dense forest to the farm. There were no tracks leading back out. Inside, physical anomalies continued. The family found unfamiliar newspapers they had never purchased. Then came footsteps, pacing across the ceiling. The threat was physically present. The killer lived in the attic, silently monitoring the family's routines through thin wooden floorboards. The family rationalized the mounting evidence, choosing to go about their normal lives while sleeping directly beneath their own executioner. When the phantom finally broke their silence, they transitioned into the butcher. One by one, the family members were lured to the barn and struck down before the killer moved into the main house to finish the attack. Among the dead was the new maid. She had arrived at Hinterkaifeck to replace the woman who quit 6 months prior, stepping onto the property mere hours before she was murdered. Bludgeoning 6 people to death with a heavy mattock requires incredible, sustained physical exertion. It is an exhausting, labor-intensive method of killing that suggests a fiercely personal fury, making a quick robbery unlikely. The psychology is contradictory. The killer possessed the patient discipline to hide in a freezing attic for days, yet executed the victims with explosive brutality once the attack began. After the violence of the massacre, the killer entered their final phase. Instead of fleeing the scene of the crime, they stayed. For several days following the murders, neighbors observed smoke drifting from the farmhouse chimney. When police eventually searched the kitchen, they found half-eaten meals on the counters and food taken from the pantry. The killer systematically took over the farm chores. They regularly fed and tended to the livestock, maintaining the agricultural routine while 6 bodies lay nearby. Behavioral theories for this unusual choice vary. Staying in a warm house with food may have been a simple necessity to survive the freezing German winter, or it could stem from a desire to absorb the domestic life the perpetrator had just erased. By feeding the cattle, stoking the fire, and eating at the table, the perpetrator appeared to be assuming the identities of the victims they had recently replaced. The discovery of the bodies sparked a massive police response. Authorities ultimately interviewed over 100 suspects, but the investigation stalled. The perpetrator's prolonged stay effectively scrubbed the scene of usable evidence. Every meal eaten and chore performed overlaid the killer's presence on top of the original crime, leaving investigators with a trail of contaminated clues. Hinterkaifeck survives in our cultural memory because it subverts our expectations of how a predator behaves. We expect a killer to strike from the shadows and disappear, not to sit down at the kitchen table afterward. The case forces us to confront the reality of a killer who chooses to stay. It leaves us with a creeping dread, ensuring that the next time you hear a floorboard creak in the dead of night, you want